Hello and welcome to the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I am Sean Hammond, Bears beat reporter over at Shaw Local. Joining me this morning, as always, is Shaw Local sports reporter Michael Dwojak. Michael, OTAs started this week. Football's back, kind of. How you doing this morning?
Good. Weather's looking pretty good right now heading into the holiday weekend, and we got some Bears football to overreact to. I mean, I feel like it's a perfect way to start your holiday weekend just to get some arguments and some debates into does it really matter? Does any of this really matter? Or are we just look desperate for some football and we just need to wait until like July or once the season gets started here? But a lot of stuff to talk about based on what we heard from Matt Eberflus and some players on Thursday.
Does any of it matter? Getting deep, Michael. You're getting deep. Yeah, we're recording on Friday. Thanks for joining us live. If you're with us right now, we're coming to you one day after the first open practice of OTAs. We got to see Caleb Williams for the first time working with some veteran players. We had seen rookie minicamp, but rookie minicamp is, it's really just like the precursor to when you get the full team in there. And obviously, OTAs are still optional, so there were some starters missing, some guys who weren't there yesterday. At least, from Matt Eberflus's point of view, at least what he told us publicly, it doesn't seem like any of those absences are really an issue with them. We can get into that a little bit more, but I want to start with Caleb Williams because obviously that's what everybody cares about. How does Caleb Williams look? How was his day? Look, we can't report everything we saw. They have certain rules out there for what's allowed and what's not from these OTA practices. But I think it's pretty well out there that Caleb struggled a little bit yesterday during that first open practice. Now, this was I think it was their third or fourth practice. This was the last one of the week, so we didn't get to see him on his first day. And from what from what like Kevin Byard we talked to yesterday, from what Matt Eberflus said, there's ups and downs. Like he had a good day the other day, apparently when we weren't there. And so yeah, you expect that. Like you're not expecting this rookie quarterback to come in here and be an MVP level quarterback during his first ever week of practice with the rest of his teammates. You've got an offense that's learning a new scheme with a new coordinator. I don't think anybody's surprised to hear that Caleb struggled a little bit, Michael.
No, and I mean, I think you want him to kind of struggle right now, don't you? Like, obviously, I know you don't want your, quarterback to, throw interceptions and all that kind of stuff. But wouldn't you rather he go through this stuff now as opposed to like week one against Tennessee or like later on in the season? Like, this is the time of year when they kind of need to figure things out and work on their communication, work on their stuff. And you nailed it. You got a rookie quarterback. You got a new offensive system under Shane Waldron. And you're going against a defense that is considered one of the best in the NFL that's been in that system for a while now. So, I don't think anyone should be surprised that Caleb probably had a bad day. And it's just interesting. You saw a couple of days ago, Bears tweeted out like some impressive, crazy throws that Caleb made to DJ Moore and Everett and that kind of stuff. And then you're going to see stuff like you saw on Thursday. I don't know. Like, it's just, you're going to see the ups and downs. He's a rookie quarterback. And I think we've talked about this before. Fans just need to set the expectation of, Caleb is very good. Yes, he's very talented, but he's going against an NFL experienced defense, and he's just going to go through some growing pains right now. I don't know really how much you really need to worry about this on May 23rd or whatever.
Guys, if you're with us, listening, watching on Twitter, click through to the YouTube link. You can join the conversation in the comments here on YouTube. We will gladly answer your Bears questions. We love chatting with you guys and hearing what's on your mind. Also, head over to shawlocal.com to read all of our Bears content. I got a story up there from yesterday. You can read a little bit more about what was going on with Caleb. Do us a favor and hit the thumbs up on YouTube. That's a great way to show the show some love. And we appreciate that. That was a tongue twister right there. So guys who were not practicing yesterday, and look, we don't know if it's just a one-day absence, if they've been out all week. But Velus Jones, Keenan Allen, Right tackle Darnell Wright, Nate Davis, the right guard, and then Montez Sweat were the notable guys who were not present, not seen anywhere on the field yesterday. Romo Dunze was there, but he wasn't participating in the team stuff. He's still dealing with a little bit of a hamstring thing that he tweaked during rookie mini camp. He didn't participate in the last day of rookie mini camp for, I would assume, the same injury. It sounds like that's not a huge concern. The Bears, Matt Eberflus said he's hopeful that Rome will be back next week. They have some more practices next week. We have another open practice on Friday, a week from today. So, stay tuned for that. But look, when you're down 4 starters on offense and you have a rookie quarterback and you're trying to work your first week with a new coordinator, there's going to be some bumps along the way. You don't have Rome. You don't have Keenan Allen. You don't have 2 starters on your offensive line, Darnell Wright and Nate Davis. It's not a surprise that there's a little bit of a struggle there. That's like half your offense. And so, yeah, it's going to be a work in progress. And I think as long as Matt Eberflus and the rest of the coaching staff is happy with the direction that Caleb Williams is heading, they seemed, at least from what we heard yesterday, it seemed like they were really thrilled with his ability to learn the offense, in a classroom setting and then take that and apply it to the field. And yeah, we didn't see a great example of that yesterday, but at the same time, like you said, there's, they're posting those videos from a few days ago and things are looking good. Kevin Byard said the offense had their number a couple of days ago. I believe him on that stuff. And the defense is got all these dudes back and was mostly healthy other than Montez Sweat. And they're in their 3rd year in that defensive system. So they should be rolling on all cylinders from the get-go. Those that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
And I think that'd be the concerning thing, wouldn't it be? If you had Caleb Williams with, just to be polite, with DJ Moore out there, and they're tearing up the defense. I feel like a lot of Bears fans would turn it the other way and be concerned about, what's going on with the defense? Why is it letting this rookie quarterback take advantage of them? So, I think you can throw it either way you want it to, whatever it works. I just think, everyone seems comfortable at this point. I think Matt Eberflus kind of played the pacifier a little bit yesterday, just trying to be everything's fine. Caleb's fine. The defense is fine. He wasn't really worried about absences, which I feel like I'm curious to see how your stance is about, who was absent and that kind of stuff, whether that bothers you or not. I know I saw both approaches yesterday on Twitter, which I know obviously is never a really good way to gauge, what is actually happening or anything like that. But I did see both sides where you got fans who are upset about, Nate Davis not being there for a 2nd straight year and that kind of stuff, and some other players as well. But I think that you would probably have the other way around if the offense was dominating, and you'd be pretty mad about the defense right now. I think this is pretty much where you expect things to be, and hopefully, we'll see who's around next week when the media is allowed to see. I know that Eberflus yesterday was kind of being, I don't know if he was being purposely evasive, but just when he was asked about who's at OTA and who's doing there at the off season, he was kind of being vague with that answer. But as long as they seem comfortable with things, I think that things are fine at this point. We're only in week 1 of OTAs, mini camps in a couple weeks. Things really just kind of get going here in a few weeks here.
Yeah, when asked about it, Flus was he said, well, everybody's been here at some point during the off season.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a total cop-out.
Right.
Okay, that's a 4-month period. If I show up for 1 day in February, who cares? The team's not really doing anything at that point. I think that was just his way of evading the question. Eric Washington, the new defensive coordinator, was asked about Montez Sweat too. And, he basically just told us that, he had a phone call with Montez Sweat. I'm like, okay, well, sure. But look, at the end of the day, these are voluntary, especially for, you're talking about some really veteran players. Montez Sweat, been around the block. Keenan Allen, nobody's worried about him missing a beat when he eventually shows up, That's nobody's worried about that. Darnell Wright's a little surprising, second-year guy. I don't know what's up with that. And I understand why people are overreacting to Nate Davis. Obviously, he got off to a rough start last season, missed a lot of time for some personal reasons during training camp. I get it, but I'm not really worried about any of these guys. I think they're all going to be able to step in there. The only thing is does that, especially looking specifically at Caleb, does not having Keenan Allen you can't control the injury with Rome, but that's two of your three starting wide receivers. How much does that hurt when you're trying to get a relationship with these guys on the field? You're trying to work that connection, and you can't really do it. You only have DJ Moore out there. And I thought it was funny. I don't know if you caught it, Michael. DJ was asked about, why it was important for him to be there. And he pretty bluntly said $200,000 is why his bonus for showing up for offseason stuff. And yeah, like a lot of these veterans have that in their contract. And you know what, if they don't care, and I know these guys make a lot of money, some of them probably don't care about a $100,000 check or whatever. That's their prerogative. I'm not too worried about it. But to the wide receiver point, like Michael, is that a concern for Caleb? Do you want to see him out there with Keenan Allen as soon as possible?
I mean, you'd love to, but these guys have also worked out together during the offseason and that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I know there's a difference probably with, the Bears coaches being there, being in the facility, obviously having, Shane Waldron watch it and, going against the Bears secondary. I'm sure that's obviously different than what they were doing earlier in the offseason. But I don't know. For all we know, Keenan Allen could be there next week, and then mini camp, obviously, and then the third week of OTAs. It'd be great if they were all there. They're all working on that chemistry. He's working on that chemistry right now with his tight ends, his running backs, and DJ Moore, obviously. I think Tyler Scott was there as well. So obviously those are still key components. And, Rome will get there. He'll get healthy. It's not like he's not participating on purpose, and Keenan Allen's a vet, and he'll be where he needs to be. He's obviously shown that throughout the year. So I know it helps, building a rapport with the wide receiver, but it feels like if Caleb is able to get the ball where he needs to, Keenan will be where the ball needs to be, based on what we saw, throughout his entire career with the Chargers. So I'm not really concerned about that, building that rapport. And just to kind of hit on something that we talked about earlier, just about whether we're concerned, I think there is one valid person to be concerned about not being there. And I do think you can say maybe this is an overreaction, but if I'm Velus Jones, I need to be at activity possible. Like the NFL changed the kickoff rules. Like you need to be working on that. You need to get back in the good graces of the Bears coaching staff because you would know better than I would, but is there a chance he doesn't make this roster? Does he get cut before the season starts? I haven't seen anything, that leaves me encouraged about him. And a lot of people just believe the only reason he's on his team is because Ryan Poles doesn't want to admit that he made a mistake on him.
There's absolutely a chance that he gets cut. Yeah. At the end of August. My gut tells me that I would bet on him making the roster. I think a lot of fans will be mad at me for saying that, but
yeah.
With the new kickoff rule, look, he's an elite kick returner. His numbers are fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about punt return. Those are two different animals. Obviously, he's had some very notable issues taking care of the football as a punt return man. But from the kick return perspective, he's been fantastic. And I know he hasn't brought one back for a touchdown, but the yards per return are just really, really elite. I mean, he was a couple of years ago, he was top 5. I think he might've been 4th. And then last year was weird because hardly any kick returners had enough returns to really qualify. I think there were only 2 that had the league minimum to qualify for the leaderboard because nobody was kicking. Nobody was returning kicks. And so it was basically, that's why they changed the rule to make that play more exciting. I do think he's going to wind up on this roster. I am surprised that he's not there. You would think that, he's a guy who, look, any fringe guy on the roster, you got to fight for your spot. But We don't know what's going on with Velus.
Right,
Maybe it was just a 1-day absence and he happened to be out. I don't know the details on all that. When they only allow us in there once a week, it's kind of hard to make a definitive statement on anything like that. But I agree. Like, I'm a little surprised to see him not there. Let's see. They might have done a little special teams yesterday, but it wasn't a ton. Some other just thoughts, as I'm thinking back to practice yesterday. Like I said, I can't say a ton about what was going on, but the sloppiness was like the same sloppiness you see every May, especially on the offensive end. Like, usually, and we see this going into the regular season. The defenses tend to be clicking a little bit earlier than the offenses, just because like running an offense is like this choreographed dance, and it takes time to really get on that same level. That's the offense in the NFL isn't always pretty in week one. And certainly it's not going to be pretty in August. It's not going to be pretty in May. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that. It's just like being on the same page as your receivers is an issue. It's weird. You can't really glean too much from what's going on in the trenches. So it's because these guys aren't in full pads and they're not hitting each other. You can't really take anything from that. And so, there might be a sack here or there, but like it's not the same as when you got the full pads on. It's just like sloppiness in terms of not being on the same page. There was at least one time where I think Caleb screwed up reading the play and they had to, redo the whole thing. And that's what's going to happen with a rookie quarterback. That should surprise nobody. These guys, all these rookie quarterbacks are barking out plays like that, probably for the first time ever, because that's just not how they've done it at the college level. So that's not really a big concern. I do think a couple of guys that looked really nice, I thought, were DeAndre Swift at running back. He made a really nice one-handed catch on this short little pass in traffic. Gerald Everett looked pretty good at tight end. I thought he was, he's really athletic. He's a big dude. He can move for his size, and I thought he looked really good too. There's gonna be things to get excited about as we move along here.
I do want to ask you about, with DeAndre Swift coming in, how does that kind of impact, Khalil Herbert and what he's going to be able to do for this team this year? Because I think they're still pretty high on Roschon Johnson. Obviously, after his rookie season, he had a pretty good year last year. And I don't think we've talked about this since they signed him. So how does he kind of play a role in all this? And obviously, he'll be on the team, I'm sure, how running back injuries go. But does Herbert, is he kind of the odd man out right now? Is it him and, Johnson splitting the role up behind Swift? I am curious to see how that running back room goes. Because I think we were both surprised when that was the first signing that the Bears made for free agency. Yeah,
they did that really quickly when the window opened up, and he looked really good yesterday. He's got really good hands. Like, for a running back, he can catch the ball, and you can pretty much use him wherever you need him. And so he's going to be your number one guy. Obviously, they committed all that money to him. Yeah, I still think Khalil Herbert right now is the number two ahead of Roschon Johnson. Just because all that experience, Roschon didn't have a great rookie season. It wasn't a bad rookie season, but it was not super notable, I thought. He does do a lot of nice things for you on special teams. And so that's always going to be a role for him because he's just a good football player. I think Khalil Herbert's going to be the guy coming off the bench. And I don't know that early on in the season, I don't know that Roschon's going to be getting a lot of touches. Obviously, all this can change. Another thing just to think about is if, heading into the last year of his deal, could Herbert be a potential trade target whenever a running back goes down for another team, whether that's in training camp, whether that's in the regular season? Could you flip him for a late round pick if you wanted to do that? I don't know if that's what they want to do. I'm just kind of speculating there. That would really depend on how much they like Roschon Johnson and feel like he can step in as that backup guy. I don't know that he showed enough last year. I think you want to see a little bit more in camp, maybe into the season. But yeah, definitely this is DeAndre Swift's time to shine as far as, he's going to be getting the bulk of the work, I would think.
Yeah, you would expect him to do that. And your trade, thought is pretty interesting. I do wonder whether you shy away from that because, you yourself could have an injury. Obviously, you saw Herbert, he was out a chunk of the time last season. So that would be interesting. But yeah, I do think that, Ryan Poles, has his guys, and I'm sure he wants to see that development of Roschon Johnson. We could have this conversation a million times, but I do think that the NFL has really become, just plug in a running back, and most of them are pretty serviceable at this point. So I do think that, Swift should probably add some really good, pass catching skills that'll make him a little bit different than other running backs, and especially different from Herbert and Roschon Johnson. So I think that'll definitely be something that'll definitely help Caleb, especially in those first few weeks. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think Herbert's probably the number 2 at this spot, and that can honestly even mean just coming in on second down or third down, that kind of stuff, just depending on the situation. So the way things are right now, I do think that you have like 1A and 1B guys. I would probably put Herbert at 1B, but I do think that the Bears are expecting a lot of growth from Roschon Johnson, and obviously that happens right now. That's probably why he's at camp, just to develop that rapport with Caleb.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, it depends how they feel about Roschon, whether they think he's ready for a bigger role at that running back spot. And the injuries are unpredictable. Look, this Bears team had basically 3 dudes last year at that running back spot, and you needed all of them. So yeah, that would of course be an argument for keeping Herbert, and I wouldn't expect them to make a move like that. I'm just kind of saying it's a possibility. But yeah, like you're probably expecting your lead back to go down at some point, and you're going to need a Khalil Herbert. You're going to need Roschon Johnson. They have Travis Homer. He's more of a special teams guy. They got an undrafted dude, Ian Wheeler, but like, it's not super. You don't have a ton of depth back there. Yes, that's a position where you can find guys. And look, if you're potentially trading him for like I don't even know what it would be, a 6th round pick or something, I don't even know if that's worth it. Like, you're probably just going to keep him and play out the season, whether you want to extend him in the future or not. On the defensive side, I thought that other than Montez Sweat, everybody was there. Gervon Dexter looked really good at defensive tackle, and they're excited about him. He's a little bit slimmer, a little bit leaner. And that's gonna, he looks athletic. And I think this is right now he's in the starting lineup, and they're not worried about that. You saw the second half of last year, what he could do. He was getting to the quarterback a lot those last 8 games. So that's promising. That's promising for your 2nd round pick last year. And obviously the secondary, they got all those guys back. You add Kevin Byard in there for Eddie Jackson. And, you think that they can pick up kind of where they left off and be creating turnovers at a pretty high clip.
And I think that kind of goes back to the conversation we had about Caleb earlier, where I heard Bird talking about it. And I know I saw some reports from, Jalen Johnson was, chirping and that kind of stuff, because I know that Bears secondary loves to talk a lot. And I think that's going to be really important for Caleb's development as well, because going against the defense like the Bears have, especially that secondary, that's just, and you remember Jalen Johnson talking about a little bit earlier in the offseason where he was like, we're like going to put him through it. Like he's going to hear it. He's going to have, he's going to have some of the toughest, things said to him right now, because we want him prepared for that. For that during the regular season when opponents are going to do that. So, I think the defense is elite, and I think that's going to help hopefully that helps the offense get to a really good level. But yeah, that secondary, obviously we're not concerned about. You just got to stay healthy at that point. And that line seems really interesting as well. I know that is this kind of the time of year where you would expect the Bears, if they were going to add a veteran defensive lineman, is this the time where they would do it, or do you still kind of hold down a little bit here closer to training camp, see who's cut after that June deadline?
I think it's more likely to happen in late July or early August if they do add somebody. I still think it's probably an edge guy. You could, while I was just praising Gervon Dexter, you could look at that position too, of course, but I would expect that to happen a little bit later on. I don't necessarily think, unless somebody unless there's a trade candidate who is surprisingly becomes available, somebody who's unhappy with their situation, maybe that could be a thing. But I would expect it's probably going to be a little bit later.
Yeah, it is curious because I've seen some names floated around, and obviously there's still needs to kind of be looked at when it comes to defensive line. But this is definitely the time of year where you're just kind of evaluating things and how things are going. And it'll be really interesting to see how that defensive line kind of comes together. And do you kind of, do you get a lot out of, seeing what the defensive line does at OTAs? Just, obviously we talked about the offensive line and how much you can really look at it. How much do you kind of, see what the defensive line is able to do by watching their practice yesterday?
I would say very little, honestly. I think they have a slight advantage maybe compared to the offensive line because, those offensive linemen can't get physical.
Yeah.
And those guys, especially on the edge, like they're pretty darn quick, and they could scoot around an offensive tackle easier when you're not in the pads. And so, no, I don't think you can learn a whole lot. You can see, look, you can tell if a guy's looking lean or athletic.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I wouldn't glean too much off of what's going on down there in the trenches. Certainly, where certain guys are playing is interesting information. A couple of years ago when we saw Braxton Jones, his rookie year, playing left tackle with the ones, that was notable. But as far as watching the matchups, I don't think you can read too much into it. I really don't.
Yeah, and I think that'll be interesting just to see, how that kind of plays out. Obviously, Eberflus I think he was talking about Dexter, just talking about his body and how much he's kind of grown. I think that'll be probably one of the bigger, things to kind of watch this offseason. Just how does he kind of play into the role? Does he continue that development moving forward? Because if he develops into the guy that I think that Eberflus and obviously Poles expect him to develop into, that really fills a major need for Matt Eberflus's defense. And I think that could be a really major, a major component of how successful they can be. And it also saves you money because you have a guy on his rookie contract where you don't have to, shell out for maybe a more veteran guy or more experienced guy. So I think that's definitely one of the biggest developments, other than Caleb, other than those other things that I think we'll definitely want to keep an eye on for the rest of the offseason.
And let's not forget that Javon was, as a rookie, pretty raw. He played 3 years of college. He was only 21 years old last year. You expected it to maybe take a year before you felt, at least a year before you felt comfortable putting him in the starting lineup full time.
Right.
In some ways, similar to the Austin Booker draft pick a few weeks ago. Slightly different spot on the defensive line, but same idea. You got a young guy who doesn't have a ton of experience. He's gonna need a little time to get acclimated. But the hope is that those guys turn into starters. And if he's a starter in year 2 on his rookie contract, you got 3 more years of control. That is so valuable. That is just, you can't understate how valuable that is from a team building perspective, because then you don't have to go out and pay somebody a ton of money.
And it also shows that, the development is working. We've seen the development work, in the secondary under Eberflus. Obviously a lot of guys were placed into service pretty early, but they, developed and have become one of the better, secondaries in the league. And I know most of their linebacking core has been acquired through free agency. And then obviously Montez Sweat was, traded for last year on the defensive line. So I think if he develops, that kind of also gives you more confidence in Eberflus's system and Poles' development and their whole development system that, they can find, these players that they can develop and kind of bring up. And that's going to lead to long-term success as well. Because, you can fill in holes as much as you can with free agency until, you kind of lose money. But if you can develop these guys and find these guys, I think that'll show you that, what the Bears are doing right now is working. So that'll definitely be a big thing to keep an eye on during the offseason.
Guys, if you're listening out there, hit us up in the comments with any questions. If you're on Twitter, click through the YouTube link. You can join the conversation in the comments on YouTube. We would love to answer any Bears questions you guys have as we embark on this OTA period. Michael, we had one other agenda on our list today, and you brought it up. You wanted to talk about it. We've been hearing these chirpings about, who has the better situation, Caleb Williams or JJ McCarthy. I don't know where this conversation started. I've also seen it out there, and I can't remember who brought this up first. But what are your thoughts on these two guys? Would you rather be Caleb with Keenan Allen and DJ and the defense that the Bears have? Would you rather be JJ McCarthy with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson at tight end? Obviously, this is going to be a conversation for at least the next 4 years because these guys are in the same division on the same rookie deal.
Yeah, I think I first heard about it. I think Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer brought it up first. Maybe he took it from someone, I don't know. It's been around though. And I thought it was an interesting conversation just based on, JJ, obviously a local kid, but I think everyone agreed, obviously, with the way that the draft played out, that Caleb is the better quarterback. But I mean, when you look at the situation, Minnesota was a playoff team, and they obviously didn't get to the playoffs last year because of Kirk Cousins' injury. But they have a defense. They have obviously the best wide receiver. Obviously, they have a tight end, a top tight end. But it seems like they also have a really good offensive line that I still think that we have questions about when it comes to whether the Bears have that or not. And you obviously, I think Shane Waldron is obviously a great offensive mind and obviously a really good offensive coordinator, but the Vikings have Kevin O'Connell as their head coach. And I think that's a major distinction. And I think that's a major reason why some Bears fans were a little upset about the Matt Eberflus decision, because you kind of wanted to pair Caleb with the offensive-minded head coach that you knew that maybe potentially wouldn't be taken away from another team. Because if Shane Waldron does well this year or the next couple of years, you kind of start thinking, oh, well, some team is going to pluck him, and then you got to go through the whole system all over again, find a new offensive coordinator, whether that's, Joseph, who's already on the staff, or someone else. So it's an interesting argument, because at first you'd be like, well, obviously it's the Bears. They have, Keenan Allen, they have DJ Moore, they have Rome Odunze. Cole Kmet has been pretty serviceable as a tight end. But if you look deeper into it, I mean, Minnesota has maybe the top end when it comes to, the wide receiver core and the tight end. And I think you would definitely probably choose the Vikings offensive line at this point, just based on, we still have questions about this Bears offensive line. So even though Caleb might be the better prospect, I think JJ might actually be in a better situation, which is really interesting for the next, 5 years?
I'm going to push back on that, because I feel like this is a Bears offensive line that's trending in the right direction. I feel like they had were they elite last year? No. But they have a lot of young talent. They have the veteran guys they signed, Nate Davis, Ryan Bates. They're not, 33-year-old veterans. They're young dudes who can still play. I know Nate Davis had a tough start to the year last year, and obviously you want him back and you want him in there. Then you look at the other side, you got Tevin Jenkins. He's probably your best offensive lineman.
Yes.
Are you concerned about the injuries with him? Sure. Yeah. You want him to play 15, 16, 17 games. We've never seen him play a full 17-game slate. But at the same time, I mean, if you have a guy who you think is your best lineman, is just a monster in there, I think you got to be excited about it. He can't control the injuries. I honestly, I do think that this offensive line is heading the right direction, even without, they didn't draft a tackle. They didn't take Joe Alt, or they didn't have the chance to take Joe Alt.
Right.
But even with Braxton Jones in there at the left tackle spot, I really think all these guys, another year together is going to really help them. You hope you've upgraded the center position. We'll see. Jury's still out on that. But certainly you think it's going to be better than Lucas Patrick was last year. I would argue that the Bears have the better offensive line, and certainly they've been able to run the ball against almost anyone the last 2 years. I think that's going to continue. I would say that the Bears defense was better the second half of last year than Minnesota's. You kind of look at the statistics. Minnesota was kind of middle of the pack in just about everything. I don't know that they weren't terrible at anything. They weren't great at anything. And so I feel like for those two reasons, regardless of the wide receiver spot, I mean, obviously the wide receiver spot matters. Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson.
Right.
If you're drafting wide receivers from the Bears and the Vikings, you're going to take him first, of course. But I still think that the Bears situation is better because that defense is going to help you win games. It's going to give you the ball in favorable situations. And I don't agree that the Vikings offensive line is that much better than the Bears, I guess, to boil down my argument.
So that's pretty much your major argument. Because if you look at it, obviously Jefferson leads the way for the wide receiver core, but do the Bears have a better wide receiver? I still think that, just having Justin Jefferson kind of makes things easier on the wide receiving core. So the Vikings probably have an edge there, even though it does feel like it's a 1-2 situation where obviously one is not worse than the other. Tight end, obviously, I think you go with Minnesota. I think I like Cole Kmet a lot. I like Everett a lot, but you'd probably have to go with them as well. So it's an interesting debate. It's definitely something that I'm sure, Bears fans will be talking about for the next 5 years, especially I'm really interested to see, what the Vikings end up doing with JJ McCarthy. Is he like your day one starter, or are they going to kind of ease him in there and get Sam Darnold into there? So, that'll be really interesting as well, but definitely a really interesting argument, and definitely not the last time I think that we'll be talking about this in the future.
I have a hunch we're going to see Sam Darnold, and I have a hunch that the Viking fans are going to be very antsy about that. And, it's going to be a Mike Glennon, Mitch Trubisky situation where, just throw the rookie in there. What are we doing here? Not that, hey, maybe Sam Darnold comes out and has a really good year. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's trending that way. I thought it was, you brought up an interesting point about the coaching staff. Would you, if you could trade Matt Eberflus for Kevin O'Connell, would you do that?
Oh, without a doubt. I think I would. I think you do it mostly just because you don't risk there's something to having consistency on the most important, part of your team. I know the defense is important. Obviously, you need to have a really good defense, but I think, and obviously, people who know much more about football than I do can, come at me and say, well, that's not exactly how this works. I'm sure I'm dumbing this down, but I do feel like it is much harder to come in with a new offensive system with a new offensive coordinator, even if it's the same system, but like new terminology and that kind of stuff. I feel like that's just tougher. So if you have that consistency with the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, a Kevin O'Connell, Mike McDaniel, I think that helps a lot. And I think, Matt Eberflus is obviously a very good coach. I think he showed that in the second half of the season. And I think he showed you that his team really believes in him. But at the end of the day, I think that you can have a consistent defensive coordinator. I think it's kind of hard when you have to consistently keep changing your offensive coordinator as your head coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting just, looking at the Super Bowl and look at the coaches who have been in there, Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. It's those offensive guys, frankly, at least in recent years. I don't have the list of Super Bowls in front of me. I'm curious when the last time you had a really defensive focused head coach was. I'm probably forgetting somebody obvious, but
Philadelphia was an offensive minded coach, right? So obviously that doesn't hurt there. I agree. I think most of the top teams that you're looking at, I know Sean McDermott obviously he's obviously more of not an offensive guy. You got John Harbaugh, who's been there for a long time. He's obviously not a offense or a defensive guy. But even, Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, we'll see what happens there. I mean, you see it with the hirings over the past, at this point, 5 years. And obviously it doesn't work every single time for every team, but most of the hirings are offensive hirings. And I think that's why we were surprised when Matt Eberflus was hired a few years ago. I think he was like the only defensive coach hired that year, wasn't he? Like he was like
he might have been, yeah.
Obviously offense is where the NFL's moved this year. And I think having consistency there, especially if you find one of the top guys, I think that can really make a big difference as opposed to, just having someone else.
Yeah, Jojo in the comments here. I was just going to mention this too. Yeah, honestly, it's since Belichick has there been a defensive head coach in the Super Bowl. He's the last one really, and before that, you'd go Dan Quinn with the Falcons. The last, I don't know how many years it is, 5, 6, 7, whatever. It's been offensive guys in large part. And Michael, did you watch Quarterback, the Netflix show last year?
I did, yeah.
I really liked watching the interactions between Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah,
it just gives you a little sense of what it's like when your quarterback and your head coach are on the same page. Well, they aren't always on the same page during the show, but the relationship that these guys have to build to create good offense. And not, obviously you can do that with a coordinator too, but I think the league is showing that in the hiring practices we've seen, in the guys that they've hired, you see why that's valuable for your head coach to be right there with your most important position. I just don't know that Matt Eberflus is doing the same types of things for his quarterback that other coaches like that are. We got some comments here. Jojo also asks about Zach Pickens. Yeah, like I said, a little hard to read into what's going on in the trenches. Zach looked good though. I mean, he's his physical self. It's certainly with Justin Jones. If they don't add anybody else, like you're going to see, and Javon steps into the lineup, that's going to be more snaps for Zach too, coming off the bench, and so that's reason for optimism. I think Javon had a little bit better rookie season than Zach, but he also had more opportunities. He's a guy to watch. He's a guy that you also hope is going to take that next step. Yeti Patagonia, thanks for joining, guys. Also, thanks for chiming in. We appreciate it. Do you think we finally have all the weapons to beat the Packers this year? Michael, I'm going to throw that one over to you first.
Yeah, I think you'll win one game probably. I think it's not going to be
well. That's not a given, Michael. That's what we said last year.
No, this is true. I forget what the streak is. It like at 8 games or 10 games? What is the streak at right now?
I think it's over 10
in a row. We can have this conversation a little bit later in the offseason too, because I do want to dive into, where the Bears kind of stack into the NFC North. And I know we're going a little bit long here, but
it's exactly 10 straight losses against Green Bay.
So, I think it'll happen this year. I think whether that's, in Green Bay or whether that's in Chicago, you do have the weapons. And I think it really helps that the Bears are going to be playing them, or maybe it doesn't, I guess, that they're playing them deeper in the year. I think if you had this matchup in week 1, Sunday Night Football, like you always seem to have the last couple of years, I think you might have had a similar situation where you have the rookie quarterback coming in, and he's in the limelight, obviously, and he's, seeing a fairly good Green Bay defense for the first time, and maybe struggles a little bit. So I think it'll definitely help that this game isn't until I think it's week 11, and obviously
mid-November sometime.
Yeah. So I think that'll definitely help them. But I am not going to go out here and guarantee you that they're going to win. Obviously, we don't know what the injuries are, that kind of stuff. But I think the defense is there. I think last year you kind of saw the defense struggle a little bit against Jordan Love. So, I mean, I think you need a full team performance, but with the way the defense will develop and the way that the offense we expect it to be, I think those games should be a lot more competitive. And if they're not, especially come November, then I think we have a lot of major problems.
Week 1 is weird for every team.
Yeah.
Teams are just, you can try to do all you can in the preseason games, but you're really only playing your starters for like a couple series at most. And that game last year, that season opener, obviously was such a letdown for Bears fans. The Packers came in there and punched them in the mouth and won that game pretty easily. I think that playing these 2 games later in the year is absolutely going to help. Soldier Field is going to be rocking in mid-November, no matter what the records are. Like, that's going to be a huge game.
Right.
And assuming Caleb's healthy, he's going to have had time like you said, he'll have what, like 8, 9, 10 games under his belt at that point. I don't know I don't have the schedule in front of me, but hopefully that means that Jordan Love and Caleb Williams are both rolling, because we saw that with Jordan too. Like the second half of the year last year, he was really good. The first half, he was, he had like a rough patch there in kind of in the middle. And then you saw really the second half of the season, he was playing at a pretty high level. This is going to be a fun rivalry if both these quarterbacks are able to move the ball. I do think that the Bears did a little bit better job defensively in the Week 18 matchup, and that's, the defense was just better then. They were banged up early in the season. I really do think that the Bears are going to win one of these games. I just got to think that it's time. And I would circle the game at home simply because it's at home and the weather is going to be nice. It's not Week 18 in Green Bay. But look, we've said that before, so I don't know. I do think that they're going to be able to split with these guys.
What are you expecting out of Jordan Love? Just like, do you think that he'll keep up what he did toward the end of the last year? Like, I know we can get into the quarterback rankings and that kind of stuff a little bit later, but do you believe in Jordan Love and do you think that he'll put up the numbers that he did later in the year?
I think he did some nice things. I think teams, obviously, you give teams a full offseason, they're going to make adjustments. That was really the first time anybody saw him. It was kind of like a rookie season, even though he wasn't a rookie. I'm still kind of concerned about that wide receiver group. I mean, they don't really have a guy, they don't have like your stud go-to dude, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed. They're all fine receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he has a little bit tougher season, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he throws for 4,000 yards and has a great year. Like, I could see that going either way. I don't know how you feel, Michael.
No, I agree. I think they added Josh Jacobs, right? That was their big move over the offseason.
That was their big, yes.
So obviously you have a good, talented, talent there to help him out. And again, I think it goes back to, you have Matt LaFleur, the conversation we were having earlier. You have an offensive-minded head coach who's one of the best, and I think LaFleur knows what to do with quarterbacks. We've seen that obviously with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers became a little bit too much, and Green Bay was kind of happy to say goodbye to him. But you've seen LaFleur be able to develop quarterbacks, and I think that'll be a major component. And I think he'll make the adjustments with Love as well, and he'll know what the defense are looking at, and they'll make adjustments there. But yeah, I agree. I think if you put the Bears wide receiving core against the Packers, obviously I take the Bears because they have all that talent. But I am interested to see whether Jordan Love is able to do that with that cast of characters, and whether it becomes more of a coaching thing and become more of a player thing, or whether the talent is finally going to kind of catch up to the Packers, especially against the Bears in the middle of the year.
Yeah, look, it's hard to beat anybody 10 times in a row. Right. That's pretty crazy. And you got to think that just the way things are trending, you really think that this is the year that maybe the Bears pick one of these off and
you would think
end that streak. They haven't won at Green Bay since 2015. That's pretty crazy. We don't have to go too deep into the Bears Packers.
It's a holiday weekend. We don't have to.
We don't have to go there. Let's not go there. I write about it twice a year when this game comes up. We'll talk about it then.
Yeah.
We're running a little long, so we're going to get going. Thank you everyone who joined in the conversation. We appreciate the questions from JoJo and from Yeti. Once again, head over to shawlocal.com. That's where all of our Bears coverage is at. You can subscribe for top-notch news coverage throughout Northern Illinois. Hit the thumbs up on YouTube. That's a great way to support us. I'm Sean Hammond on Twitter. It's at Sean_Hammond. He's Michael Dwojak. Find him on Twitter at MDwojak94. This has been the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. Have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend, everybody.